What you think about that?
He didn't do it.
Just like that, in very clear words, Charleston White declared David innocent, and he backed it up with proof that no one saw coming. You would be shocked to know the evidence he revealed, turning the entire case upside down and leaving everyone questioning what they thought was true. Charleston White declared David innocent. When the news first broke that a dismembered body had been discovered in a Tesla registered to rising music star David, the internet instantly spiraled into a storm of accusations, theories, and outrage. Headlines painted him as guilty before a trial even existed. Fans debated whether his lyrics were confessions, and brands quickly cut ties to protect their image. But right in the middle of all this chaos, one voice rose up louder than most. One man who wasn't afraid to say what almost nobody else dared to. Charleston White, known for being brash, controversial, and unapologetically unfiltered. Charleston stunned audiences when he boldly declared that the 20-year-old artist wasn't guilty at all. In fact, he insisted that the lack of an arrest was the clearest sign of David's innocence.
Yeah.
What you think about that?
He didn't do it.
Fuck out of here. All the evidence that's out there.
It wasn't just a casual statement. Charleston doubled down with logic that to him was undeniable. He argued that in America, especially for young black men, people are arrested on far less evidence every single day. If law enforcement truly had solid proof against David, Charleston insisted he'd already be behind bars. They arrested with way less evidence. They'll put him in jail just to put a hold on him. To Charleston, the absence of charges didn't mean authorities were building a bigger case. It meant they didn't have a case at all. He illustrated it with one of his trademark analogies. Rough, raw, and meant to make
Listen, hold on. If they find a dead body in me and your car, and this is our car, do you think they'll let me and you stay out like long? They got out. So think about this.
That blunt comparison hit at the heart of Charleston's point. Everyday people, he argued, would be locked up instantly if a body was tied to them. The fact that David was still touring, still free, still moving around publicly without an arrest. That, Charleston said, spoke louder than any rumor. But Charleston didn't stop at pointing out the lack of an arrest. He went further, dissecting the allegations that David had been involved with an underage girl and connected to her gruesome death. On social media, speculation was everywhere. Matching tattoos, leaked photos, even song lyrics fans claimed were confessions. Yet, Charleston dismissed the narrative, calling it
So think about this. If they got all this information on him dating a minor, an underage kid, and she looked like a white girl, mixed girl, what they let just stay free like this?
The way Charleston framed it, the story didn't add up. A black artist with alleged ties to a missing 15-year-old girl, supposedly with physical evidence linking him to her death, and yet not even a detainment, not even a set of charges to hold him temporarily. To Charleston, that silence from law enforcement wasn't negligence. It was proof that David might not be the villain the world was painting him to be. And in typical Charleston fashion, he didn't shy away from making his audience uncomfortable. He pointed to the way the body was found, dismembered, hidden. A crime that suggested far more planning and brutality than many thought David was capable of. He pressed his viewers to consider whether the whole thing could have been a setup, whether someone else entirely was responsible. They got all this evidence to point to say he did it. He done sliced the body up because the body was butchered and still no arrest. As those words spread across X, YouTube, and Instagram, Charleston's take split the internet in half. To some, he was defending the indefensible, trying to absolve a man whose own car contained a teenager's remains. To others, Charleston was one of the only people willing to say out loud what they had been quietly thinking. Maybe the story wasn't so simple. Charleston White didn't just throw out a single hot take and move on. No, he lingered on this case, hammering his point home over and over again. To him, it wasn't just suspicious that David hadn't been arrested yet. It was downright impossible to believe the story as it was being told. He reminded his audience of one of the most
So you mean to tell me OJ was found with a bloody glove, he was arrested immediately? Immediately, with all the circumstantial evidence they found on OJ, they placed it. So you mean to tell me they got all of this on this and he still get to move freely amongst America?
By invoking OJ, Charleston wasn't just making a comparison. He was highlighting what he saw as the hypocrisy in how cases are handled. If police will lock a man up based on the flimsiest circumstantial clues, then why hadn't they done the same with David, who supposedly had far stronger evidence stacked against him? And Charleston pushed this point into even darker territory. He began spinning scenarios that suggested someone else might be behind the crime. Scenarios that, while uncomfortable, revealed how much he doubted the official name.
So I'm saying, let me think outside the box. Maybe his mama done it. Maybe her mama done it and set him up. Maybe one of them racist uncles or cousins don't like her. Maybe the other boyfriend done it. Maybe the pimp who was sex trafficking her for the last year when she ran away done it.
These weren't polished courtroom arguments. They were raw speculations thrown into the public like grenades. But that's exactly why Charleston's voice carried so far. He wasn't bound by rules of evidence or cautious legal language. He spoke in a way that resonated with the public, blunt, messy, and emotionally charged. And in doing so, he painted a picture of a case that, in his eyes, simply didn't add up. He even mocked the idea that David's relationship with the victim was clear-cut, calling into question the credibility of the matching tattoos that had gone viral online. Fans had latched onto the detail that both David and the 15-year-old victim shared a SH tattoo on their index fingers as proof of intimacy. But Charleston wasn't buying it. To Charleston, the tattoo didn't prove a relationship. If anything, it was another example of how thin evidence was being blown into damning headlines. And then came one of the most controversial lines of his defense, the part that made many people furious. Charleston turned his criticism toward the girl herself, using words that, while deeply offensive,
and I know they said, man, he wrong for calling her a little hoe, but she was. Little girl don't run away from home, little hoes and little bitches.
That statement wasn't just harsh. It was a bombshell. Critics accused him of blaming the victim, of excusing David by attacking a child who could no longer defend herself. But Charleston's defenders argued that he wasn't excusing anything. He was trying to flip the narrative to force people to ask whether the story being told about David was too one-sided. And in Charleston's world, uncomfortable questions were better than blind acceptance. He hammered home the racial angle again and again, making it the foundation of his entire defense. They don't let black men get away with these kind of crimes. Not in America. That line echoed across social media. For Charleston, it was the ultimate logic. If a young black man really had done something this horrific, he wouldn't be free. The fact that David was still out in the world, still breathing air as an uncharged man, meant something deeper was at play. And that was why Charleston White stood out. While others were dissecting tattoos and lyrics, he was calling attention to the bigger picture, race, and how the system operates when the cameras are rolling. By this point, Charleston White wasn't just questioning the case. He was tearing it apart piece by piece and daring anyone to prove him wrong. His words carried the conviction of someone who had been studying injustice his entire life. To him, this wasn't just about one rapper. It was about a system that had never been fair to black men suddenly acting too fair in a case that seemed tailor-made for a quick conviction. Charleston's reasoning was almost paradoxical. The body found in a Tesla registered to David, the allegations of a relationship with a minor, the eerie lyrics in his songs, and saw guilt. Charleston looked at those same facts and saw innocence. Because if guilt were real, he argued, the system wouldn't hesitate. It was a strange kind of defense. Charleston wasn't saying the evidence didn't exist. He was saying it was too much evidence. So much, in fact, that its very weight made the lack of arrest suspicious. To him, this was a contradiction that demanded explanation. He went even further, painting scenarios that almost no one else dared consider. What if, he asked, this wasn't David's crime at all? What if it was a setup carefully constructed to look airtight, but in reality full of holes? Those what-ifs turned Charleston's commentary into a viral spectacle. Some listeners shook their heads, dismissing him as reckless, irresponsible. Others, though, found themselves nodding along. After all, setups and cover-ups weren't unheard of in the world of celebrity scandals, and Charleston knew exactly how to keep that tension alive. He brought the conversation back again and again to one undeniable truth. David was still free. Okay, the death. He was dating a 13-year-old girl. So, we got all this evidence, and you want me to believe that she's dead, and the police have not even arrested him for being involved. To Charleston, that answer was simple because he didn't do it. And that was the hill he chose to die on. He knew it would spark backlash. New people would accuse him of downplaying the death of a child, of excusing behavior that shouldn't be excused. But Charleston had never been afraid of backlash. In fact, he thrived on it. So, as social media tore itself apart, debating whether his defense was truth-telling or trolling, Charleston doubled down. He wasn't backing off. He told audiences to think about every case they'd ever seen where young black men were dragged into courtrooms over rumors, arrested on suspicion, locked away on maybe and probably. And now here was a case stacked with DNA, tattoos, songs, cars, and headlines, and still no arrest. To Charleston White, that wasn't coincidence. That was innocence. And for millions watching online, it was the kind of statement that forced them to stop, replay, and wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had a point. Charleston White's defense of David didn't come out of nowhere. To understand why his words went viral, why his opinion could stir up millions of comments, and why people even gave weight to his outlandish claims, you first have to understand the man himself. Because Charleston White isn't just another commentator with a microphone. He is a man built on controversy, a figure who has lived a life steeped in crime, redemption, hypocrisy, and spectacle all rolled into one. Charleston's controversial history. Charleston was born in 1977 in Texas, and by the time he was 14 years old, his life had already taken a violent and irreversible turn. He was involved in a fatal altercation outside a Foot Locker store, an incident that left a man dead. At just a teenager, Charleston was tried as an adult, convicted of murder, and locked away until he was 21 years old. That moment branded him not only with a criminal record, but with a permanent stain on his reputation. To his critics, it's proof that he has no moral high ground. To Charleston, it's the foundation of his life story, a past mistake that fuels his outspoken mission today. After his release, Charleston tried to reinvent himself. He became a community activist, even founding the Hypocrisy Over Politics Hopi organization dedicated to steering kids away from gangs and crime. For a while, it seemed like he might be on the path of a reformed man, someone who could use his painful past as a warning to the next generation. But Charleston was never built for quiet redemption. His personality, his energy, his need to provoke. Those things pulled him back into the spotlight, not as a saint, but as a firebrand. By the 2020s, Charleston had become infamous for his brutal honesty and his willingness to call out anyone, rappers, politicians, even entire communities, T.I., Boozy Badass, and countless others, using their names as stepping stones for his own brand of online commentary. He didn't just critique them. He attacked their families, their parenting, their reputations. Every insult went viral. Every feud brought him more followers, and every time he did it, people were left asking the same question. Is Charleston White a truth teller or just a clout chaser willing to say anything for attention? Take his feud with streamer Aiden Ross, for example. During a live stream in 2023, Charleston pepper-sprayed Ross' associate on camera, creating instant chaos and legal threats. That single act became a snapshot of Charleston's personality. Volatile, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. In another infamous moment, he waved stacks of cash at hecklers during a comedy show, taunting them instead of diffusing the situation. To some, it was comedy. To others, it was evidence that Charleston wasn't a reformed activist. He was a showman addicted to outrage. Exactly why people listened to him. Because Charleston doesn't just talk. He embodies contradiction. One minute he's condemning gang culture and preaching about accountability. The next, he's tearing into victims, mocking tragedies, and laughing at deaths. In September 2025, he even cursed out the family of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk after his death, saying it was just white-on-white crime and laughing it off. That moment alone showed the duality of Charleston, part social critic, part troll, all chaos. So, when Charleston White speaks, people listen for one of two reasons. They either believe he's exposing uncomfortable truths, or they're waiting to catch him contradicting himself. Either way, his words travel. And that's why when he turned his spotlight onto the case of David, it mattered because Charleston's voice doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the very center of controversy. And this time, his target wasn't a rapper he was feuding with or a politician he despised. It was the system itself and the claim that David was innocent. By the time Charleston White threw his weight behind David, his reputation was already a patchwork of scandals, hot takes, and viral explosions. He wasn't an outsider suddenly stepping into the spotlight. He was already a storm, and his entry into the case only added thunder to an already chaotic situation. In early 2024, Charleston made headlines after mocking the tragic deaths of Chicago rapper King Von and Houston's Takeoff. He didn't just mention their names. He laughed, dismissed their legacies. The natural end for Street and clips of his commentary spread fast, cementing him as someone who didn't respect sacred ground. For many, this was when Charleston stopped being a reformed activist and became a professional antagonist. Then came the clashes with Boozy Badass. Charleston openly accused Boozy of being a terrible father, claiming that Boo's decisions were leading his children down the same path of crime and chaos that he himself once walked. It wasn't just an insult. It was a public attack on Boo's family. And when Bowie fired back, Charleston only escalated, throwing out threats that blurred the line between comedy and real violence. To Charleston, it was just keeping it real. To critics, it was harassment. Even law enforcement couldn't escape his wrath. Charleston called out police chiefs, mocked entire departments, and even once claimed he would shoot any cop who tried him. The contradictions piled higher and higher. Here was a man who built his reputation on speaking against gang violence, but who simultaneously glorified confrontation and armed defiance. And yet, Charleston thrived in the chaos. Every insult, every feud, every outrageous statement, it all made him a bigger name. By 2025, he was less an activist and more a one-man media circus. Whether it was brandishing guns on Instagram Live or clowning rappers in interviews, Charleston...
If nothing else, put him in jail just to put a hole on him.
A dead body found in your car?
Listen, hold on. If they find a dead body in me and your car, and this is our car, do you think they'll let me and you stay out like long